But one thing I do want to point out for those that are watching this live or will be watching this live or live is that we're, as you can tell, live. So you can put in your questions and comments, and we'll try to field them as we go along in our conversation. And hopefully we could be interactive with you guys as you tune in. So welcome, Lizzie, to my podcast. I'm glad we could make this happen. And all the way from the other side of the world, I love it. So welcome. And I want to first start with kind of your background in music and kind of the journey you've been on. I know you've won awards and I love all of your tracks. So before we get into that, I just kind of want to go through your background and talk about your journey through music as a singer-songwriter as well as a DJ and producer. So welcome.
Amazing. Well, thank you. It is really nice to be here with you. And yeah, it's great to have a chance to chat. So my career in music really, well, my love for music started when I was really teeny tiny. In fact, I have a recording that my dad made when I was a baby of me, and he was had put some headphones on, and my mum comes in and says, "Oh, put some music on. She loves music." And I really, from the age of, I think it was 3 or 4, I started to learn to play the recorder. And my mum taught me that. So by the time I even got to school, I was already like playing a bit of the, albeit very basic, musical instrument, the recorder. And I really just ever since then loved music. Growing up, I was really fortunate at school. I was able to learn the flute and the piano. And I did like classical style singing as well. And I did that all through school and college. And I was going to go to uni to do a music degree. But I'm showing my age here a little bit now. But when I went to look at the courses back then, it was only really kind of doing like sort of like classical music. And there wasn't really any other options, whereas obviously now we have with like technology side and business side. So, you know, there would be a lot of, you know, people sort of saying, well, what will you do after your degree? You'll just end up working in a music shop. And so I kind of decided to take some time out, and I went to uni and did a sensible degree. For anyone who's listening to that on the audio, I did the, what are they called? The air commas around that, sensible degree. Yeah. So while I was doing that sensible degree, I was studying at Guildford, which is a town just outside of the main boroughs of London, so like a 40-minute train ride into the centre of London. And that is where I discovered dance music. That is where I discovered this amazing world of underground clubs with the most loveliest people, basically the Groove Cruise vibe, but this is 20 years ago. But that kind of vibe where everybody is a friend, everyone will hold the door open for you, and you know, if you brush past them, oh, I'm so sorry, like didn't mean to, you know, that. And it just a really, really, really happy, lovely place with amazing music. And so then it's very cliche, but I spent my student loan on some vinyl decks and set them all up. And one of my memories is, because again, when I was learning to DJ, there was no internet. We would just get an email, and we'd go to the computer room once a week to check our emails. That's like how long ago this was. So you couldn't Google how to DJ. You know, there was only like one other person I knew at uni that even had decks. So I was completely self-taught, but loved it and got hooked, and then started sending out demo tapes, as they actually were then, to clubs, and started getting my first gigs. And that was about 20 years ago. And then for the sort of next 5 to 8 years, I was, you know, kind of doing it as a passionate hobby and really loving it. And then I kind of decided that I really wanted to focus my whole career on music. So I went back to college and did a BTEC in music technology, which then existed, and it was amazing and I loved it. And then I started really working on doing vocals on tracks. So I had quite a few different tracks with some quite well-known producers. Probably the biggest track that I had around that time was with Robbie Rivera. It was called Departures, but Cosmic Gate remixed it, and they used it for like a lot of their shows at that time. And so that kind of really helped sort of get my name out there. And then after a couple more years after that, I started really looking at the production side and producing my own tracks as well, because I was just finding, and it is unfortunate the way it is in the industry, but things are a lot better now, but vocalists tended to not be appreciated in the same way that producers were. So I really felt in order to kind of establish myself, I needed to be able to produce the entire track as well as do the vocal on it. So then, yeah, I learned how to do that. And then, yeah, been DJing, producing tracks, singing, writing music ever since.
Wow, that's awesome. So I kind of want to go back to kind of have something in common where I started playing the saxophone when I was in 7th grade. So you started with that whole training of music theory and playing instruments and the classical training. I mean, schools here in the US are a little bit different, but yeah, that's where I got my love for music, and hence my screen
Brilliant.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's great, but I also want to touch on something that you discovered dance music a little bit later, but that was when you were kind of on your journey to going to the university for music studies.
Mm.
When did you decide that like classical versus electronic music, you found more of a love in the side of electronic and singing and songwriting part of it?
I think honestly, what happened was after I got my A level results, and I'm not sure exactly how that equates to the US education system, but basically, it's kind of like when you would be getting ready to go to uni. So, those grades you get really determine if you're getting to the university you want to go. And I was predicted to get an A in music, and I actually got a C. Now, obviously, with so much more world experience under my belt, I actually know that C is really pretty good. But at the time, it kind of gave me like a massive crisis of confidence because it wasn't what I'd expected. So I didn't get into the uni that I had expected. So it was kind of like at that point, I think that I don't think I really realized it at the time, but actually, I think I was quite sort of taken aback by that. And I kind of put a lot of it on the back burner for a while, while I was just, deciding what else I might do. So it was really at that point, and I'd kind of got to the stage of playing the piano where if I wanted to do another grade, it was grade 8, which is like the one that musicians can spend a whole year like kind of working towards and doing. And I don't think I was ready to kind of commit to that much intensity. So yeah, it was at that point that, I mean, I'd always loved all sorts of music. So when I was at college, I was very much into my indie and my grunge, and I had like steel toe cap Dr. Martens, and was wearing like tie dye, skirts and velvet jackets, and all thrift stores and all that kind of thing. So I was really into, and I was in a band actually. I forgot that I was a lead singer in like an indie band as well. I forgot that bit. So the music was always really, really there, but I think it was that classical style. I always particularly loved the composition as well. That was like one of my favorite parts. So that was always there. And I think, I just, without really planning to, I just subconsciously took a little bit of a break from it. And then, yeah, it's like amazing how it's all really come full circle. And it all started when I was at uni and I discovered the joys of electronic dance music.
Awesome. So back then, did you notice kind of what it is now of like breakdown of genres? Or was it just electronic music? Because I discovered it in the 90s myself, and I just knew it as electronic music. But now we break it down. Is it house? Is it trance? Is it whatever it may be? So what
Sorry.
what is have you figured what is your thoughts on like the music being the music and whether it's a genre or whether it's just the vibes that we're going to go into about the Groove Cruise and kind of how it brought you to it?
I think actually it's a little bit a combination of the both. And when I was first going out, the music that I discovered that I was going to was very much a kind of combination of trance and a bit of progressive, and then what we would call hard house, which is actually like 140, 145 BPM, really banging stuff. But it was the energy that went with it was the bit that I really loved. So I was DJing that for about sort of 5 years, and then I started to then discover house music, and then I kind of really was like, oh, for a year or two, like I really love trance and I really love house. And then I was like, well, I like to DJ both. But then I thought, well, if I really need to progress, I kind of need to make a choice. And there's just something about the groove of house music that always kind of, and the fun element, I think, as well, like that always kind of pulled me. And I've still got like a really soft spot for trance and like melodic house, you know. And funnily enough, I do a lot of vocals of that style and I love it. But from a DJ point of view, I'm always kind of pulled like to that funky groove. So I then started to kind of veer off towards the path of house music. But I think the genre thing is quite funny. And I think also like genres can suddenly get like a bad name for no real reason other than the fact they get really popular. And like I've seen it happen in the UK so many times over the years. So there'll be like it happened with electro house in about 2006, 2007, and like we, like me and my friends as DJs, were like really into it, and then you could see it kind of starting to cross over into the mainstream and get into the main charts, and then everyone starts producing it, and then it kind of like dies off. And so there's like these kind of peaks and troughs, but I think house music itself just has that quality that can be really, really timeless as well, and that's also like such a nice thing. I could talk about that for an hour. So
Well,
if I
kind
start
of
going
a
too much of a tangent.
no worries. Along those lines, though, I've noticed there's been kind of this resurgent in recent years of like the disco feeling in
Mm,
house music, and I love
mm,
it. I
mm,
never I never
mm,
disliked disco. I mean, I grew up, my parents are from that era, so I grew up listening to all kinds of stuff. So w I think it's funny that people are like, "Oh, disco is back," but did it really ever leave in house? Because you hear that in a lot of tracks, specifically
mm,
in some
mm,
of the recent ones you've released and some others that are really popular right now in
mm.
Beatport. So what is your thoughts on like this integration of different styles within house?
I think it's brilliant. I love it. I love, yeah, I love the opportunities that house music has to do just that. And, you know, yeah, I love disco stuff. Like, I just love it. And I think that in general now, I think there's a bit more fluidity between kind of like disco and house. And I think that a lot of DJs will kind of put, you know, their playlist, and it will kind of weave a bit between sort of disco house, tech house, and kind of go in and out a bit. And I think that things aren't as pigeonholed as they used to be. And I think like a house DJ can have a really good appreciation for disco and like vice versa. And I just don't think that they're kind of like as kind of neatly boxed in as they used to be. And I think like Defected, I think, have played quite a big part in that with their Glitterbox brand, which is, to me, I mean, I, you know, from my what I see, it's like predominantly disco, but there are like elements of house, and then you'll be listening to like the Defected playlist, and then they'll weave in elements of disco as well. And another one of my favorite labels, Tool Room, in the last few years, I've noticed that they've, alongside like their kind of core like tech house, which some can be like really banging and underground, and some's a lot more groovy, but they've brought out a lot more kind of vocally house tracks, and you know, more kind of disco influence tracks as well. And I think that's really great, because you kind of banging tech house is brilliant, but it doesn't have so many opportunities to be heard. So I think it's quite nice for artists to maybe collab with artists that are like in related genres. but maybe is going to bring out like a little bit of a different sound. And then, you know, like my new collaboration with James is definitely much more like tech house, and I definitely think it's got like that kind of banging feel to it. But I think it's quite nice because it's like our two musical styles combined, which then it gives it that opportunity to be heard in kind of like daytime summery sets. This is obviously when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, as well as kind of like banging sets. So yeah, I think it's great. I think, you know, I'm not into like genre snobbery or anything like that. You know, I just think good music is good music.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that a big thing in your career was when Cosmic Gate remixed your track. They were on the podcast last year. Um, so when other artists recognize your work and kind of how are you feeling about the inclusivity of artists now in the industry as well as women? Because there's been a really big, great move for women in house music as DJs, specifically now on Twitch. I think 2020 became Fem House Fridays is like huge on Twitch. There's a lot of great DJs that I wasn't aware of before the pandemic. But what is your thought on inclusivity in the industry?
I think that I've kind of experienced like a lot of inherent sexism. When I was first starting out, it was terrible. I would turn up for a gig, and if there was a sound engineer in the club, you know, rather than saying like, "Oh, could you just like take the mids off a little bit," they would just reach over and like actually just. I'm like, I can do that, you know, and there's a lot of, you know, is when I was about 10 years ago, it could be quite daunting. I remember going to ADE, the Amsterdam Dance Music Conference, and like literally, it, you know, is much better now. Although it's not as much as I thought it would have kind of swung, you know, to be kind of more evened out. But you know, you kind of see just one or two women dotted about, and it's like, and there used to be, and again, it's not so much now. But there used to be a lot of inherent like, oh hey bro, and it was kind of like just assumed that producers would be male, for example. I never experienced anything towards me that was really, you know, really frustrating. But there were like little elements that I was like, yeah, this is kind of tough. And one thing that I would say is, and again, it's really improved now, but it was a real challenge, I think, for vocalists to get taken to be as important on a composition of a track as the producer was. So, you know, I read a brilliant article recently where it was talking about some of the biggest house tracks, and the vocalists on the house tracks aren't even credited. So, you know, everyone will know. I mean, I just read a really interesting article actually on I forget. It's Rita Silva, "Touch Me." I think that's the one. And the vocalist is Cassandra, but no one ever knows that it was Cassandra that sung that. And, you know, with the big house tracks, most of them would be nothing without the vocal. So why was it that sometimes the vocalist didn't even get credited, which has really, you know, like serious ramifications for their career? Why can't they be recognized for their contribution to the track, but also potentially for royalties that are due to them? If their name isn't on the title of the track as a featured artist, they may not receive as high proportion of royalties as they should. So there was a lot of issues like that, and I myself had an interesting challenge where it was expected that as a vocalist it would be a superstar DJ featuring Lizzie Curious. And I went through a couple of years of working with producers and saying like, hey, like, would it be cool? Are you okay if it's and Lizzie Curious? There was a couple of reasons why. For example, Beatport at the time, if you were featuring, then the track wouldn't show up on your profile as an artist. If it was and, then it would. But it's also, I think it's just recognizing that the vocals on the track play a really important part. So I think that is also really improving. I think the diversity that you get on lineups is improving. I think we've got a long way to go. And, you know, and I'm surprised that it hasn't, you know, there's not been more female DJs that have, you know, sort of come into creativity. And still, when you know, sort of look at lineups and you look at conferences, there's such a high proportion of male. But I think that it's definitely got a lot better. And I think that what's also really good is that the knowledge is out there for any artist to really empower yourself to understand how the industry works, how you can make a career out of it. And that, you know, would stand for anyone, no matter what kind of, you know, area of society they came from, or you know, gender, etc. I think it's definitely become more inclusive, which is brilliant. And I really like try my best to support up and coming female DJs, because, you know, I think we've all got a really, you know, collaboration is the greatest thing we can do, really. So I think it's definitely getting better, but I think that there's still a lot of improvements that could also be made.
Right. And you're also an instructor at Point Blank as well, right? For the London office? Awesome. So talk about the students and the teaching you do there, because I know there was one here in LA, but it shut down because of the pandemic. And so maybe I'll take online courses because I'm kind of getting into it myself.
Yeah.
But talk about, you know, your work with Point Blank, because I did meet those folks because I went to Winter Music Conference in 2019. So I talked to them about it, but you know, timing with
Yeah.
everything. So talk about your work there.
I teach online for Point Blank. I did spend a year teaching at their London campus, but then I live on the south coast of the UK, and I was very close to Brighton, which is like an hour train journey into the centre of London. So that was quite doable as a commute. But then I moved along a little bit, and then it was like an hour and a half. And then when you add in your kind of travel time into London, it was getting to be quite a long commute. And just, you know, it was very serendipitous. I'd been thinking to myself, oh, I'd love to teach online. I wonder, you know, like if I should approach them. And then I got an email from my school director saying, would you be interested in teaching online? So I was like, ah, it's amazing. So I teach music industry, which is a entry level course from anyone aged 18 to 80. And I teach online. So I have students from all around the world, which is fantastic. And this is basically a module which will show you how to have a long-standing career in music, how to understand how all the areas of the industry operate, and, you know, where your revenue streams are as an artist. And that is really, really important, you know. And I wish that I had had an option to do a course like that when I went into music 20 years ago. So I also teach record deals and branding, which is focused on two parts. First is looking at the different kind of deals you'll come across in the industry. So really understanding what's in the different contracts that you may be looking to sign, understanding the legal terms and what the like implications are of what you're signing. And then the other side of that is developing a really, really good artist brand, or, you know, a business brand. Say maybe you're going to be setting up a management company, or, you know, designing software plugins, whatever it is you want to do, creating a really, really strong brand identity and understanding how to market yourself. And this term I'm going to be teaching music publishing for the first time, which I'm really looking forward to. So Point Blank recently launched a new music industry degree. Excuse me. So I'm going to be teaching the music publishing module. So that's really looking at the side of the business that is all focused around the composition. So again, it's understanding where the money is that comes from. If you're writing compositions, if you're a composer or a songwriter, how can you get that money? What would you get that money for? And understanding how it all links and works together, and the contracts. And yeah, I really love it, because I love seeing artists and anyone who wants to work in the music industry. I've taught a lot of students who are going on to work in A&R or management or marketing, and I love seeing them get that empowerment. And I think that was a thing that for so many decades in the music industry was missing, was that there was and I experienced it myself as an artist. I would receive agreements for a track to sign, and I literally, it was like looking at something in a foreign language, and I'd get quite anxious about it because I just didn't understand what these different things meant and how they worked, and I wanted to get my music out there. But and when you feel that lacking in knowledge, you definitely feel like on the back foot, and you definitely feel inferior. And you can really see how historically, I think the big players in the music industry, unfortunately, were able to get away with, giving artists terrible contracts and all of these things. But now the knowledge is there, and I love seeing these students absorb it all up, and like they're ready to just get out there and have brilliant careers in the industry. And it makes me really happy because I love helping people.
That's awesome. I think it's great that like we have that now where you can take courses on that because I think a lot of the issue was the publishing side or just the back end of the industry has kind of been a mystery unless you're kind of in it for so
Yeah,
many years. And so a lot of people are interested in the industry, but they don't
yeah.
realize the business side of things. And
Really complicated.
so,
Really complicated.
right. Do you see anything changing going forward now that kind of the world is changing in terms of right now during the pandemic and just kind of the platforms that people have?
I think that certainly here in the UK, since the pandemic hit, because obviously artists weren't able to go on tour and do their shows, it really brought the focus back onto music streaming. And there is a lot, it's been ongoing, but I think it's just a bit more public in the public eye now, how little most artists normally earn from music streaming. So it sounds, when you get thousands of streams, it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but the funds that generates for you as an artist are, you if you got, say, 10,000 streams, you might earn, I mean, this is obviously like an estimate and it depends on deals you sign with labels, etc., but you might earn maybe $50, 40 or $50 for like 10,000 streams. So you can see how your huge artists like your chain smokers or I don't know, Diplo, for example, like they're bankrolling it because they're getting millions of streams. And at that point, when you're getting that many, it is, happy days. And it's also like that kind of thing where the more streams you get, the more playlists you'll get into, and the bigger playlists you'll get into, then the more people will hear you. So it makes it harder and harder for the entry level artists and those sort of middle class artists who don't have huge amounts of budget to put into their marketing. So one of the things that I'm always teaching my students at Point Blank is that to be successful in the industry, you really need to be smart. So streaming is I think it's always going to be there. I think it brings out some amazing opportunities. I think the fact that we can release our music ourselves or through independent labels is brilliant. But I think that unless, it does depend on your style of music. And if you're writing, really, popular kind of commercial EDM, which is going to get into those big playlists, you may well have like a really profitable career from streaming, but it's not the only income that's out there. And I think what the pandemic has brought about is that actually it has been a real shock to a lot of artists that when the money that comes from their touring and their shows has been taken away, and also like the associated things like the merch that you might have sold at your tours, etc., when that's all gone, then you go back to look at the income of streaming, and then you see comparatively how little it is when there's so many tens of thousands of people who are playing your music. And the other thing I think that also has become under scrutiny is the models that the streaming platforms use to work out how they're going to divvy up their revenue to the artists, without again going into too much detail. But it's another model that favors the top tiers. So rather than, you take your $10 subscription, and if you were only listening to Lizzie Curious, like for the whole time that you were streaming, which, yay, thank you. But yet some of your money from your streaming subscription would still go to your Dua Lipas, your Ed Sheerans, etc., because of the way that it works, in as much as proportionally overall, they've got way more streams and way more listeners. I mean, I've really summarized it, so I probably didn't explain it very well, but these are the sorts of things that in the pandemic, people are actually taking a step and looking at and saying, well, hang on, what's happening why is it that there are millions of streams, but then this artist is not getting enough? And the thing is, I think the streaming platforms are getting a bad rap, but it's not just down to them. It is also down to deals that record labels have put into place. They may not be that great for the artist. So I think in the pandemic, that's one thing that has come to the forefront a bit. I also do think that the live streaming has been very interesting. I think that for DJs, because of the copyright issues, it may not be something that can be like a long-term business model for us, because but if you're an artist creating your own music and playing your own music, then you've got the rights to, you know, to do whatever you like with that and to broadcast it, so you don't run the risk of having your stream pulled. So obviously we saw what happened with Facebook, and I think the thing with Twitch is that they've got a really good opportunity to get the licensing right. And as a DJ, I would happily pay a license to Twitch, which would go to all the creators of the music, that so I could play their music. And as creator of music, first and foremost, I'm just happy that other people will find out about me as a producer and hear my music. So I would be happy, but unfortunately it's not just down to me. And do you know what I mean? So I think it will be interesting to see what happens with Twitch in the next 6 months and various laws and legislation. But I do think the opportunities to build up a community with Twitch are amazing. And I think I would have really struggled this past year if I hadn't have had Twitch and my live streams. So I'm really grateful for Groove Cruise in the first place, because you suddenly had all these DJs that were stuck in a pandemic, couldn't order any equipment off of Amazon. And we were all at home, so a lot of us didn't have, you know, like I was going to a radio station, to a studio there to do my radio show, so there was all equipment there. So I had like just my more simple home setup and my studio, so I was missing like a few connectors and a few leads. And I remember me and Mike, my other half, we just got like everything out on my dining room table, like this is everything we've got, how can we make this work, what can we plug into this, and how can we use that? And it was like some kind of like, I don't know, like the best thing I can liken it to, but please bear in mind without any of the drama and no one's lives are at risk. But you know, in Apollo, I think it's Apollo 13, where they're back in space and they are on the spaceship and all they've got for equipment is what's there. And then down on the ground, they like go to the meeting room and they're like, right, this is what the guys have got up in space. This is what we need to do, make it happen. And obviously, like in incredibly less dramatic circumstances, but that's kind of what it was, because I couldn't pop out to a shop and get the connector I needed. There's nothing on Amazon. But Groove Cruise were brilliant. They had T-Bot, who is a technical guru genius, and he was on WhatsApp with each of us DJs, helping us with our setup, explaining how it all worked. Like, he was absolutely phenomenal, and he got us all enabled to do those first live streams through Groove Cruise. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would have started live streaming from home, because I was of the mindset of like, I just don't have the right setup, and I was like, I just don't know if I can make it work. So thanks to Groove Cruise, I did those first few live streams, and at least I had some way to play my music, and it, because up until that point in the pandemic, I'd been really struggling quite a bit, like we all had, and I was like, what is my purpose now? Everything I've worked towards with regards to, because like Groove Cruise was my big thing that I'd worked towards for quite a few years, and I was working towards my US shows, and it was all working in the right direction, and I was so happy. And then boom, it was all gone. And it was not only that was gone, it was my radio shows in the UK, my shows like at the lovely beach bar around the corner, everything gone. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I kind of felt like and I was lucky that I had my teaching, because that still gave me my purpose. And then I remember just thinking, well, I'm going to try doing some live streams just to give me a reason to keep playing music and making music, because that was the thing I was struggling. I was like, I don't feel like writing any house music now. I feel like I have nothing, I just want to sit at my piano and write really sad songs, which was cathartic. But yeah, started doing the live streams, and just the way that you can have this lovely community on Twitch and you can make the streams your own. So my stream, as you know, is a little bit more PG-13, and like, because I want it to kind of be the stream that my mum can listen to and my friends' kids can listen into, and I kind of love that vibe. But I also love that you can, have your stream how you want. And just the wonderful community that I've been able to build up on my stream. But the general way that it works, it seems to be so supportive, and I love how there's this DJ network that are really supporting each other there on Twitch, and I think that's really, really good. And when we do come out of the pandemic, there's going to be, I think, quite a lot of really wonderful meetups of these people who've come together online and then actually get to meet in real life, and it'll be amazing.
I totally agree. To kind of go back, well, Twitch it was been my pastime recently, but I've popped into your stream and a lot of other streams. I mentioned Film House Fridays, and I'm usually Sundays with Doc Brown and all kinds of great artists out there. But well, you mentioned something about how you're not sure that Twitch is going to continue because of the copyright issues. Now, I know a lot of DJs, to kind of get through those issues, kind of don't always keep their streams up afterwards to ensure
Yeah.
that there's no strikes against them.
Yeah.
But I also feel like Twitch is also on the precipice of like greatness, because the music side of it has just grown so exponentially, because most people thought of it as just a straight streaming platform
Mm.
for like gaming and other um, topics. But I do you think that it's, when people start going to tour again and maybe change kind of their routines again, do you think it'll be prolonged for the industry, or do you think that some people might do both? What is your thoughts on that?
I think there will be quite a lot of DJs which will do both, because you can connect with a really wide range of people in one place on Twitch. And that, I think, is really, really special. What I think might happen as well is that DJs may start live streaming from their shows more. So I don't know if you follow on Twitch, Shinta Loves House Music. She's
I do.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love her. She's a great DJ from Bali. And I think at the moment, I don't know what things like, but at the moment they've been able to go, she was able to do her show from Cafe Del Mar in Bali. So she was there actually doing her gig, but live streaming as well. And I think that there may be more things that DJs might do of that ilk. They might do, a few more kind of behind the scenes live things on Twitch, maybe like a bit of chatting before a show, or come and see us rehearse, like that kind of thing. So I think I think that it will be maybe a bit more of a hybrid than it was before. And I think that what's been good is that Twitch is a really good platform for encouraging people to contribute to support the artists that they really love. And I think that's really lovely about the way that the platform is built. And their subscription model, I think, is really, really good as well. And because Twitch is owned by Amazon, I do think that the opportunities are there to sort it out with regards to the music licensing. And I do think the budget must be there as well, because the amount that the DJs are bringing in for the platform must be huge. And add into that the fact that it's Amazon and that Mr. Bezos, I think he's sitting on quite a nice pile of money there. So, out of any of this kind of streaming platforms that are doing it, I think Twitch has got the incentive to get it all sorted. The problem is that at the moment, like, if you play tracks that are released on the really big labels, so like, for example, now, unfortunately, I don't play anything on Spinning because it's owned by, I think it's Warner, and it's those big three labels, Warner, Universal, and Sony, that are clamping down on Twitch, because they're the ones that are seeing such a big loss of income, because they're such big enterprises. So if you play like a lot more underground music, you play lots of music from indie labels, or you're friends with artists that do shows and you maybe play like upcoming stuff or stuff that's just released, you've got a much better chance of flying under the radar. But the problem with Facebook was that you could do that for a while, but it got to the point where even if you played a track that had like a sample from something else on it, you could get pulled because of that. And then I think it just got to the point where Facebook were getting such a bad rep that they were like, do you know what, we can't do any live streams where, in terms of music. And that's when they kind of pulled the whole thing. So I really hope that it doesn't go that way with Twitch. And I do think if you're creating new music, you would still be able to obviously go and do that. But it's just for us DJs. And obviously we can get permission from the labels that we work with to play their music, and we can get permission from the artists. So all is not lost, but it might require us to be a bit more creative as well. I might be playing a lot of Lizzie Curious back catalogue music.
Well, there you go. So we've mentioned the Groove Cruise, so I think we should break this down. So first, the Groove Cruise does have a Twitch channel, and they've been doing a series of live streams called Cabin Fever that has been raising a lot of money for their WET Foundation to help those in need in the community during this time. And I've tuned into that, and you're one of the first DJs to get on that series. But let's talk about the Groove Cruise as a whole. Let's talk about the experience, because I finally was able to go on it in 2020, right before everything shut down, and now I'm like addicted. But let's talk about your experiences and being a resident DJ on the Groove Cruise, because you try to explain it to people that haven't been on it, and they just look at you with those eyes like, what? Like, it's not EDC, it's not some other festival, it's on a cruise ship. Like, explain kind of your experiences on the Groove
Well,
Cruise.
I first went on Groove Cruise in 2017, and it was when I had released my track "You're Not Alone" with Scotty, and he basically what's the word, enabled it so that I could go on with him and sing the track live. So I sang it at the Sail Away party, which was amazing, and he also got me a gig in the silent disco. And when I just got on there, I just got onto that ship, I could not believe how fun it was, like, and how nice everyone was and considerate. I think that's the thing. I think it is just a combination of people who are truly kind, people who really appreciate having a chance to escape from the stresses and the pressures of everyday life. And so when they're there on that ship, a lot of people, it's not like, I don't know, when you're a bit younger and you can go out every weekend and pick and choose the clubs, like as we get a bit older, we have different commitments. So I think a lot of people use Groove Cruise as their kind of destination trip where they can forget about everything else. And the fact that you've got all of these amazing artists on the ship, and there's something any time of day which you can go and enjoy, and then added to that, because the thing is, like, I've never really liked music festivals. I've always liked the idea of them, but I am just not good without my creature comforts. So I have gone to Glastonbury and I did camp, and I didn't really enjoy it, if I'm honest. There were some amazing moments like seeing Paul McCartney, and there was some brilliant aspects, but I just know I like a warm shower and I like a nice bed to sleep in. And also, like the big festivals, I've always found you can end up doing like a lot of walking around, like to get to another stage. It's kind of exhausting. And on Groove Cruise, if you're like, that set was brilliant, right, okay, what should we do now? All right, well, we've got half an hour and then so and so starts. Great. I'll pop to the room, freshen up, go to the buffet, grab a quick bowl of something to eat that, get a drink, and then I'm there dancing to the next DJ. And when it's my DJ set, I can run downstairs, get my DJ bag, come bouncing up in my tutu and my sequin jacket and be like, right, let's go. And I think everybody is really approachable and friendly, and the friends that you make there are really, really special. And it's like a connection that you have, and it is just so happy and joyful, and everyone is really accepting. There's no judgment, and It is just a really happy place. And then add into the fact of that you're in the middle of the ocean. So, it's really feels at the same time as being like massive, like amazing sensory stimulation of like huge events and sound systems and stages. And then you can turn around and you've just got the ocean like right there behind you, and you can breathe in that clean ocean air. And it just, yeah, it is really, I think, a unique experience, and very special. And I think it is fantastic. I love it. And I'm very happy that I'm resident with such an amazing party.
I agree. I mean, like I said, I got to finally go because usually it's either sold out or work got in the way in the past, so I wasn't able to go. But finally made it happen, and now it's just like I'm gonna make it happen because once
Yeah,
you go once, it's like
yeah,
it's all over.
yeah.
And I went. I didn't even go with the crew. I ended up going by myself because the people that were gonna come with me had to back out. But I also knew other people that were going, so it was just nice to meet up with everybody and then meet new people and see everybody's sets as much as you could because there's so much going on at the same time. But yeah, it's one of those things where when you can look behind, like when you're at the buffet and then you go out to, well, on the old ship we were on, be able just to like go out in that kind of patio dining area and listen to like the terrace as you're eating your food and see the sunset of
Yeah,
the ocean. It's like there's nothing you can't.
yeah,
It's hard to describe, but it's like the most picturesque thing you could experience because it's just everybody's just chilling, having a good time.
yeah.
And yeah, and I agree. Like everybody's so nice and accommodating. Like you don't see that at a normal festival. There's or even club gigs because everybody's there for their own reasons. So
Well, this is the thing. When I first started going out clubbing back in the late 90s and early 2000s, um, I would go to a club with like a couple of my friends from Guildford or from uni. And again, because this was how long ago it was, not many of us even had mobile phones. So we would say, right, are you going to go to this night? Yeah, okay, I'll meet you here by the speakers in 2 weeks' time. And I remember going on my own to meet these friends I've made, but thinking, well, I really hope they'll be there. But if they're not, it doesn't matter because I'll just make new friends. And getting to the club, and actually, I think pretty much every time those friends were there, but just making a whole load of new friends. And that's how it feels on Groove Cruise, is that you will just make friends every direction you walk in because people are so nice. And I also do wonder if the fact that you're not having to trudge across like muddy car parks or fields, or you've had, when you do want to rest, you can go down to your cabin and have a good, whether it's a 40-minute nap or a 6-hour sleep. So in general, people are less kind of like fatigued, so they've got that like energy to be able to be really nice and considerate because they're not like completely exhausted and having trekked through like 5 muddy fields to get to the stage or something.
right. Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it is you can when there is time in between sets or there's not sets going on maybe early in the morning, it's good to
Yeah,
like refresh, get your breakfast.
yeah,
Some people go to the gym on the cruise, which those dedicated people. Um, some people get, and the other thing is, you have activities on these ships,
yeah,
so you can go to the spa even, and so it's just one of those things where it's
yeah,
kind of
indeed.
everything you want in a vacation is like right at your fingertips.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that first year I went, I played crazy golf with Cosmic Gate. That was great. Obviously, like singing with Scotty Boy, and then getting off the ship, and we went to Turks and Caicos, and Scotty and I shot the video there for You're Not Alone, where we did some of it like on the beach. It was amazing, and I was like, this is just unbelievable. And every trip since has been amazing. And when I get on the ship on that first day, it just feels like Christmas to me, but obviously different to Christmas. But I will just be going around to everyone, hugging them and saying like, "Happy Groove Cruise, Happy Groove Cruise." It is like the happiest place on earth.
it is even more than Disneyland. I
Yeah.
But before we go, I do want to talk about your recent releases and what you have upcoming because it's exciting, and I know I've heard some of it on your Twitch streams. So those that haven't followed Lizzie on Twitch, it's at Lizzie Curious, correct?
Yeah, that is
Uh,
it. That's it.
Perfect. So let's talk about your recent releases and your upcoming and all the excitement going on.
Well, the big one that I'll talk about, and I always kind of laugh now because I've said it so many times on my Twitch stream, but it was my track that came out on Tour Room at the end of November. So Tour Room for me is a label that I have been for like the last 10 years just absolutely the biggest fan of. I love Mark Knight and I love the music they put out, and like when I was before the pandemic, my radio show, like every show I did was full of touring tracks. And when we were on Groove Island back in 2019, Mark Knight had a touring stage there. And I remember having a chat with him afterwards and just saying to him, like, sort of, you know, he vaguely knows who I am. Like, in any case, sort of just saying hi. And then I said, like, I'm working really hard on my productions. And when I've got something that I feel is good enough or I feel is right, I'd love to send it over to you. And he's like, yeah, definitely do that. So that was great. So I've been working on the last few years, really kind of like honing my kind of like funky groovy kind of sound. So I had this idea for a track. I wanted to do a track that kind of, well, basically the whole idea from the track came that I said, I want to make a track that I feel Fatboy Slim would play. That was like my kind of thing. Like, Fatboy Slim is my number one favorite DJ. From his productions to his sets, everything about him I think is fantastic. And so I was like, oh, like imagine if I could write a track that he would play. So and I was like, so what is it about his sets that I love? I love the energy, and they really kind of have like a carnival fun vibe to them, you know. So it's like trumpets or steel drums or things like that. And in fact, I had done a remix a few years ago of Nine Toes Finder, which Fatboy Slim had been playing. So I was kind of halfway there with my dream. So I was like, I want to make a track like that. So I just started hunting around for really cool kind of trumpet horn samples. And I spent like a day kind of going through loads of old sort of Latin American kind of things. And I found this one sample and I was like, yeah, I just think this has something about it. So I made like a rough track and then sent it to my friend James Herr, who is like a production god. He's just a brilliant person to work with. And he actually does like a lot of engineering for a lot of the touring artists. So sent it to him. I was like, what do you think? Would you be interested in collaborating? And he really loved it and was like, yeah, let's do this. So the resulting track, I just think, is such a nice blend because it has that kind of uplifting, fun, Lizzie Curious energy to it. And it's got the trumpets and the horns and it's got the groove, but it's like a tech house groove. So it just kind of ticks so many different boxes. And the response we got from it has been brilliant. Fatboy Slim said he loved it, which was obviously amazing for me. Mark Knight really got behind it, played it on his radio show, and you know, we've had some great support from other DJs to hit loads of, you know, great spots on the charts. And you know, a lot of the things people were saying was like, oh God, like just wait till the summer when we can play this, like, you know, out to people. So having that track out on Tour Room has been brilliant. Me and James are working on our follow-up track at the moment, which I'm very excited about. And then another thing that's been great the past year, pandemic notwithstanding, has been working with a brilliant label called In It Together Records. They're based in London, which is obviously, you know, really close to me. And they're the sister label of Let There Be House, and they're just run by such nice, genuine people. And I had a release with them February last year, which did really well. And I was actually due to go and do a show with them in London. And it was just in those couple of weeks where things were starting to get a little bit concerning about the pandemic. And it was at the point where our government hadn't put any kind of rules in place, but promoters and clubbers were saying, we just don't feel comfortable about bringing people together. So it was a show that I'd been really looking forward to. And actually, when I went to message Jazz, who runs the label and events, and say, look, I'm really sorry, but I just don't think it would be a good idea for me to come and play, he was about to message me and say, I'm really sorry, but we don't think at the moment bringing people together in a crowded sort of underground space is the right thing to do. So that was last March, and I'd been so looking forward to meeting them all. And but I have had several releases with them over the past year. So I've been collaborating with a brilliant Italian artist called Rhythm Staircase, and we did Disco Duck, which got to the top 5 on Traxsource Jack in House. And it's just a really fun tune. I like making really fun tunes, or tunes that make you happy, or, you know, make you feel uplifted or energized. So I've got my new track with Rhythm Staircase on In It Together Records coming out next Friday. Well, this Friday, in fact. So Friday, the 15th of January. I'm going to have a big release party on Twitch, on my Twitch channel next Friday. And it's also being remixed at the moment by a production duo I really like called 84-Bit. So very excited about that. And I should have a release coming out under my Melody Smith alias in February. So you remember towards the start of our chat, I was saying that I've always had like a really soft spot for trance and progressive, and I've done a lot of vocals. So last year, I kind of created Melody Smith to be the kind of alias for when I want to write vocals of that ilk. So things that are maybe more dreamy, or like perspective, or emotional, or, you know, maybe even like kind of sad. So I think I should have a Melody Smith track coming out in February. And I've just finished a collaboration with Rescue, who's a house DJ that I love. So waiting to see what label that will be released on, but that should be coming out soon. And I'm just, really, you know, grateful for the Twitch channel that I've got and my lovely fans, because that is giving me the incentive to write the new music and play it.
A birdie, i.e. Doc Brown, told me you guys are working on a collab. Is that true?
Yes, we are. It's so close to being finished. I need to go and just record a few extra vocal elements for it. That was my dog barking, by the way. If anyone heard that, I wonder what it was. But I had to reconfigure a lot of things in my studio. Bear me a second. I had to reconfigure things in my studio to set it up for the live streaming. So I don't have a vocal booth at the moment, so I need to kind of just rejig some things. But as soon as those little vocal elements are done, which I'm hoping will be next week, it will be finished, and I'm really excited about it. Really.
That's exciting.
It has big piano riff. It has a lovely main hook that I think is just so identifiable. So and it has Doc Brown's like really just that solid tech house groove, you know, so it will be really good to get that finished.
That's exciting. Well, I don't want to keep you too long because of the time difference, but thank you so much for joining this episode, and I'm happy that you can make this happen. I do want to put up on the screen for those watching live, because thank you to the 5 or 6 of you that have been tuned in the whole time. I see you out there. I know you're not really talking, but I see you. Thank you. I want to put up, definitely check out Lizzie's website for all the details to get to her Twitch channel as well as Spotify. She has a great Best of Curious playlist that I put up on my socials as well yesterday.
Thank you.
So check that out, because it's all her greatest hits, and you'll definitely be dancing. But
maybe would you be so kind as to put a Spotify link directly if any of your fans would love to?
Sure, I'll blast that out. And where else, other than here, other than your website, where else can people find you on social media?
Mixcloud. I've got so many mixes on there, and loads of Groove Cruise mixes as well. So if you are missing, like I am, that Groove Cruise energy this weekend, or you just want some feel good uplifting vibes in general, I've got a playlist on Mixcloud of all of my mixes I've done for Groove Cruise. There's like my one where I open for Cascade on the beach. There's my Deep House Brunch one, like all sorts. So please do, you can check that out on Mixcloud, and obviously Spotify, and of course I'm also like on all of the streaming platforms, but Spotify is the one where I have my house music playlist on there and my Best of Lizzie Curious. And Instagram, if you want visual, nice, happy, uplifting images, generally packed with some kind of like sparkly attire or something ridiculously bright and colourful, come and say hi on Instagram. And I'm on Twitter as well, and Facebook. Pretty much everything apart from TikTok. I didn't
Same.
get into TikTok, but now Instagram has reels. So I don't know if you saw, I just made a great little reel from loads of my Groove Cruise clips, like of me on
I
dance.
did right before this, and I was like, yes, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and those that will be listening to this in audio form, be on the lookout for your feeds. And thank you again, Lizzie, for joining me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. And yeah, thank you, Brooke, because it has been like a very isolating year. So just having the chance to just chat to someone is so nice, you know? I just talk to my dog a lot.
Well, I agree. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, thank you very much for supporting me as well. And for anyone who's listening or watching this back, please do, yeah, Fridays on Twitch. I'm there 4 p.m. UK time, which is 11 a.m. Eastern time, and we just got such a lovely group of friendly people in the chat. It's so nice, so positive, so happy, and I really try to play like lots of uplifting music. Sometimes I theme the shows, so like this Friday just gone, I did all kind of Groove Cruise, like happy big anthems and uplifting tunes. Next week I'm going to do a showcase of my favorite tracks from In It Together and Let There Be House because of my new release coming out. And sometimes I'll be doing crazy things, like before Christmas I dressed up as a curious little elf. So as you can tell, I just really like to, you know, have fun and hope that you know, make people happy and sprinkle some like positivity out there for everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, and talk to everybody out and about in internet land. And thank you again.
It's a pleasure. Take care. Have a lovely Saturday. Bye.